2, 1. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most liberating things about being born is being born free. Being able to experience the world and all its viscerality, which includes the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. If your father was a businessman and you inherit that benefits him and not you, on-site government, you become a slave to the past and a shell of yourself when you are robbed of the very lived experiences that make life meaningful. At age 18, when you become woke and aware of all of this information, you're likely to become very scandalized by the memory of your ancestors, because this isn't just a debate about knowledge and information as opening talked about, but also the weight of legacy and the weight of expectation that you do not consent to and that everyone on side government just jumps the gun and assumes is good for you. The centuries of data flooding into your mind at best make you efficient, but we challenge the lens of that efficiency at the point in which you no longer live life in your own terms, but actually live it through the lens of a particular bias by your entire ancestry and the entire humanity that came before you, using you as this flesh vessel to be able to forward their history, their belief, and ideology. Opening opposition to an extent touches on this, but doesn't give you the true comparative and the weighing of the counterfactual, which we are proud to talk about simply being status quo. What is the path to victory of closing opposition's extension, along with a couple of strategic observations? The first is, an influx of infinite knowledge from the past pushes you to even potentially be more radicalized and stifles the capacity for you to be able to make fair decisions and engage in things like discourse and critical thinking. This is because of the things that opening talked about, that there are a lot of really pleasurable and good things, but also a lot of really bad things. That is to say, it's normal as a human to be able to want to gravitate towards the nice things and kind of forget and reject the bad. And the point in which these things are to an extent codified and dictated for you by virtue of you inheriting those particular memories becomes particularly bad and robs you of the chance to be able to make good decisions. What this does is that this resolves opening clash and actually takes Gov at their best, flipping that idea of knowledge and extends on their idea of agency coming from opening opposition. The second is the fear of making mistakes, which is the biggest harm of side government, actually happens and becomes even worse at the point in which you no longer feel and experience things through your own lens, but now it becomes so charged by the expectation of other particular people. This creates a perverse incentive structure that actually uses children and their next of kin as slaves, ladies and gentlemen, to be able to forward their own legacy and not the legacy of the very people choosing and making those decisions who live in the real world. The third is, even if you get all of these gov benefits, and this is me engaging and taking them at their best, unlike our opening who wasn't as comparative, people actually get locked in to the past ideology, and it just makes it really hard to be able to live and enjoy in the present, because we have to understand that everything you experience becomes ascribed for you already, meaning whatever is good, whatever is bad, is largely dictated by the morality and experiences not by you, but the person before you. And this, ladies and gentlemen, creates a historical chain of servitude wherein it's only literally the first generation who's able to make a good choice, then everyone subsequent after becomes a slave, and as you push it and go on, you compound that slavery and make it harder for people to be able to make decisions. What exactly is the comparative, right? We have to understand that at best, efficiency and knowledge which motivate side government because of innovation are cool and important, but it's just not as important when you weigh that against individual choice and agency of your lived experience. The intuition pump here is simple. In status quo, we still have development and learning. Sure, it might take a bit longer, but we think that it taking longer allows us the capacity to be able to extrapolate meaning from good and bad. In fact, good and bad are not monolithic. They actually change throughout time, and people who once thought something was good in the past might realize, wait, this thing before, which we thought was good, was no longer good, and the same thing with something bad. Morality exists on a spectrum, and it adjusts per social issue and per generation as human time is able to live. So, things like racism, things like war, things like genocide, which their side is worried about, possibly gets even codified in status quo, wherein it becomes a perceptual and perpetual memory of what that is, ascribed by those particular before you. We think, sure, at best you cannot forget, and that's where my POI comes in. Yeah, you can't forget, but you also can't forgive as well. You also can't love as well. That sounds fucking cheesy, but in reality, if you think about it, there are just some bad things in the world we rather not have to constantly live for, because their side is driven by using people as a socio-political battering ram to be able to forward the agenda of the past generation and ancestry, to be able to forward this idea of what it truly means to be a human. What is the counterfactual? Decisions are important and emotions are valid, and we think on their side, at best, you get people very emotionally charged, likely out of venge, likely out of anger, and that ultimately polarizes ideologies even more at the point at which the lens of empathy that they try to champion is one that is broken. Because if people really are as empathetic, then we wouldn't have a problem. But things often revert to the mean and average, and last time I checked, the average human, even good debaters, fall into things like cognitive biases, emotional decision making, and certain heuristics that lead to poor decisions. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest impact is you just don't consent to these particular things. Their side assumes it's all going to be fine and dandy at the point in which you're 18 and you get absorbed with it. But we think that is kind of scary, it's broken, and ultimately makes you a shell of your former self. We are very proud to stand in opposition.